Hi everybody, I'm Julie. Welcome to my cozy kitchen here in San Francisco. Today I'm going to be partnering with the Western Neighborhoods Project to cook something for you. The Western Neighborhoods Project is a great nonprofit organization whose mission is to interpret, preserve, and share the history of San Francisco's Western neighborhoods. So I've got a really cool recipe today that most likely was cooked in the very first home built in Seacliff. So we'll make that today. We'll learn a bit of history and have some tasty food. So stay tuned.
It starts with this home, which was the very first to be built in Seacliff. It is right off of Baker Beach at 125th Avenue. It was the residence of the Brown family who moved in 1909. James Tong Lee, a Chinese immigrant, was the home's chef and steward for over 50 years. A collection of his recipes entitled James Tong Lee in the Kitchen was published in 1988, and a copy now lives at the Western Neighborhoods Project. Today we will be trying one of the recipes and making bean sprouts and fish. We'll start with 2 bowls. In the first bowl, we want some peeled, chopped ginger. You want 1 teaspoonful. Then you want bourbon, gin, or brandy, 1 tablespoon. And half a teaspoon of soy sauce. In the second bowl, combine 3/4 teaspoon of cornstarch, 1 teaspoon of soy sauce, 1 teaspoon of sugar, and then the ingredient listed as white powder, which is actually MSG, so this is optional. I decided to try it. 1 teaspoon. And mix.
All right, let's start cooking. I have my 2 bowls, one the ginger and bourbon and soy sauce, and the other all those other things that I just added in. And I'm going to turn the heat on. It doesn't say how hot. I'm gonna guess maybe he used a wok and the heat would have been pretty high, so I'm gonna put it on like medium high heat. So while that's heating up, we can talk a bit about the family. So it's the Brown family house, and Phoebe Hearst Brown is the woman who lived there the longest, I think anyway. Phoebe's grandmother, Charlotte, was actually a physician, and one of the physicians who founded, or one of the people who founded the Children's Hospital in San Francisco. It's getting hot now, so I'm gonna add a little bit of oil. So I added maybe 2 tablespoons of oil. So Phoebe's father, Dr. Philip Brown, helped a lot of people in the earthquake, the 1906 earthquake and fires. He took over an abandoned house, I think, to mend people and take care of people. And then afterwards, tuberculosis was going pretty rampant, and he set up a sanatorium outside of Fairfax, California, for women, especially working class women, could go and get treatment. The only treatment at the time was to just kind of take care of yourself and ride it out. So he set up the sanatorium, and they did a lot of arts and crafts, and the pottery actually has gotten famous from that sanatorium. I sliced the fish. This is about 1 pound of cod, and I sliced it into pretty thin strips. So we're going to first add 2/3 of the ginger mixture. Woo! And the fish. It's cooking. A little salt and pepper. So this house, back to the family home, the Seacliff house, construction finished in 1909, and that's when Phoebe and her family moved in. And that's also when James Tong Lee joined the house. Mr. Lee and Phoebe were great companions for their whole lives, and a great story is that Mr. Lee never had a citizenship for most of it, all his life. He never got his citizenship, but then they were getting older, and Phoebe, wanted him to have it. So the whole family worked really hard to get Mr. Lee his citizenship, and then when he finally got it, they celebrated with a trip around the world. Phoebe took him, and they traveled the world together, which was a really nice thing to do, I think. So the fish is pretty much cooked. Doesn't take long. I'm going to take it off the heat. Add a little bit more oil. Then I'm going to add the remainder of the first bowl and the sprouts, which I rinsed and dried off. And the recipe says to roll them around in the oil, so doing my best to roll them. So the Seacliff house, it's right on Baker Beach, and it was the very first house built there. Had its own private entrance to the beach, which I believe it still has. So Phoebe Hurst Brown, in this time at this house, threw great parties, and Mr. Lee was the chef, and he would cook, and people would talk about his cooking and remembered it fondly. So much so, in fact, that this cookbook was published, I believe, by friends of the family to honor him and his life and his recipes. So I have very high hopes for this one. All right, so the beans have softened. I'm going to add the cornstarch and soy sauce and MSG paste. Smells good. Next up is oyster sauce. It doesn't say how much, so I guess I'll add a tablespoon or two. And a few dashes of sesame oil. Then a little bit of water to thin it. The sauce has thickened. I'm going to add the fish just to warm it through. All right, I think we're done cooking. I'm going to take this over to plate up. All right, time to serve it up. Put it in a bowl. So if you were curious about seeing the house in North Seacliff, the address is 125th Avenue. And you could probably, I'm not sure, but maybe you could from Baker Beach see it up on the hill. So here's our fish. And now I know it'll look nicer with a little green. Let's dig in. I think this would be delicious with some steamed rice. Here is the finished product, bean sprouts and fish from the cookbook James Tong Lee in the Kitchen. And let's try it out. delicious. Really lovely. I'm gonna have to add this to my recipes that I make. If you want to learn any more about this, there's a terrific podcast that the Western Neighborhoods Project made. It's up on their website, outsidelands.org. You can then navigate to podcasts and you'll find it, about the very first home in Seacliff. So thank you for joining me in the kitchen. I hope you had a good time, and I'll see you around later.